Well. Clemson Tiger fans, college football fans, welcome back to another episode of the All In Show here on the Voice of College Football Clemson channel. Thank you so much for joining me. I am, as always, your host, Tiger Paul Craven. I got my boy Jordan Bowman in the back, and boy, do we have a show for you guys tonight. We will be talking a ton about the ACC realignment talk. We'll talk about the ACC meetings and some of the athletic directors' comments after those meetings and things of that such. We'll also be talking about a bunch of different other topics tonight as well. So please go ahead and get your comments in the live chat. Get your questions in. Me and Jordan Bowman, as always, interact with the chat as much as we possibly can. But before we get to the show tonight, if you are not subscribed to the channel, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button for us. It'll help us out. We're trying to grow this channel. Also, hit that like button. Share this video out with any Clemson groups that you're in, any college football groups that you're in. Share it with your friends. Bring in some more audience for us to chop it up about ACC football, Clemson football, college football, all of those type of things. We appreciate all of you guys coming in tonight. But without further ado, I'm going to bring on my boy, Jordan Bowman. Jordan, how you doing tonight, man?
Awesome, man. Just kind of watching the baseball team currently. They kind of have that going on in the background.
There you go.
So I've really been enjoying this team's progress, and it's kind of been a nice distraction from all the craziness going on at ACC meetings this week. So I'm excited to have another show tonight. We've got a ton to talk about. Obviously, a lot of it's going to be surrounded around these ACC meetings, realignment, all of that. But we'll also get into some recruiting and some other topics as well. So make sure you guys stay tuned and hit that like button if you haven't already.
Yeah, absolutely, man. We got a ton to talk about tonight. The ACC realignment talk has been blowing up on YouTube, been blowing up in the sports media with, teams grouping together, people looking at the deals and all those sorts of things that we'll get into. We'll get into all of it tonight. But shout out to all the people that are in the chat already. Let's get a shout out to the chat real quick before we get started. We got Ben Adams in here tonight. Thank you for popping in, Ben Adams. We appreciate it. Not me, says go Taters. Yeah, go Taters.
Go Taters.
Taters for life. John Sarian gets in here. Must be spinning a roulette wheel lately to come up with the times. Okay, so to get all the confusion around our time of our show out of the way, since John Sarian got in here and said that, I do agree. Our time has been bouncing around between 9 p.m. and 7 p.m. It is back to 7 p.m. For our live show. That's our natural time for our live show. It shifted to 9 p.m. Due to myself. You guys can blame me for that. My daughter's softball team and her schedule kind of dictated that. But we are back to our 7 p.m. show. Any changes we will post on the community page. Outside of that, just assume that we will be here every Thursday at 7 p.m. If it's going to be different for any reason whatsoever, we will post on this channel, on the Voice of College Football Clemson channel community page. Either myself, Jordan Bowman, we will post on that page and we will let you know the change. But we're gonna try to stick to that 7 p.m. time slot as best we can on Thursdays. Okay, it won't be perfect. Life happens, things happen. You got all sorts of things that both Jordan Bowman and myself are dealing with. More so me, because Jordan's always here for it. So, but just blame me for any of the time changes. I'm sorry. I do the best that I can here. But we appreciate all you guys tuning in. We got Felipe Garcia in here. He said, "What's up, y'all and all?" What's up, Felipe? We appreciate you coming into the chat. Go ahead and hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button if you're not subscribed already. We got Jason Moose, excuse me, in the live chat. Thanks for stopping by.
What's up, Jason?
He said, "What's up, knuckleheads? Hey, we're just here doing our thing, man. We're just here doing our thing." Um, John Sarian says, "We don't care at Clemson anymore. We've passed them up. Better talent." What is he talking about? Oh, he's talking about the note.
He's talking about he's talking the Buckeyes live show last week. Apparently, I didn't tune into that one. So apparently
Okay.
they were doing a little trash talk at Clemson. Yeah, they said we've passed them up with better talent. Clemson is slipping backwards. And then this week during the Knowles live, I guess Big Game James said that Florida State has passed Clemson in talent. Well,
okay. Hey,
they're feeling confident. They've made some huge
Look.
additions in the transfer portal. I mean, Keon Coleman just made a commitment to them this week. That's a huge addition for their wide receiver room. But I don't know. I mean, when you look at the overall talent on the roster and the recruiting rankings and the overall roster makeup, I don't think you can make that argument yet. But hey, you still got to play the games on the field. Talent doesn't matter. Right. The talent doesn't matter if it's not coached well. I mean, look at Texas A&M. So we'll see.
Look no further than Texas A&M for that one, for sure. But yeah, the Noles are super confident heading into this fall, heading into the season. They are the media darlings of the ACC, much like what was it? Oh yeah, it was North Carolina State last year, right? Yeah. North Carolina State. How'd that work out for them? I'm not saying Florida State is North Carolina State, but there are some similarities there. Big Mick gets into the chat section. Thanks for stopping by. He says, "Go Buffs." Go Buffs and Deion Sanders. Prime time out there in Colorado. We'll see how it works out for them. Jason Moose says 4-8. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it goes out for them, man. Let's see. Who else we got in here? We got Ty Gwynn in here. He said, "Hey, gentlemen, how you doing, man?"
Resident Gamecock fan. What's up,
Resident Gamecock fan. Thanks for stopping by, man. We appreciate you, man. We appreciate you stopping by. He says FSU is strong in the portal. They have been. They've been very strong in the portal. But you got to put a team on the field, and to be the man, you got to beat the man. Like I've said before, I don't doubt FSU's talent. I don't doubt their ability to recruit in the transfer portal. Obviously, they have done that at probably one of the most elite levels there is. But at the end of the day, you gotta, look, you gotta put it on the field. You gotta put a team together. So they're gonna have to beat Clemson on the field before I concede that in any way. So those are the guys in the chat right now, Jordan. Before we get into tonight's show, how's your week been, man? How you been doing?
Awesome, man. Awesome. Just living life, enjoying the free time, the little free time I have left. Before I get right back into I have a lot of stuff going on in the summer, but I'm just enjoying the free time. Love doing the show with you. Still, always not going to let that affect it. So
there you go, man.
How have you been this week?
I've been good, man. I've been pretty busy this week. As you know, more busy today than I thought I would be. But it's been a good week, and I, as always, look forward to this show that me and you do together here on this channel. This is kind of my breakaway from my normal job, from all the stuff I got going on in my life. So I appreciate you being here. I appreciate all the people in the live chat being here. And I can't wait to chop it up about ACC, college football, and more importantly, Clemson football. So we'll go ahead and get into the show tonight. And we're going to lead the show off tonight, guys, with something that probably won't surprise anybody in the live chat. We're going to lead the show off with the conference expansion talk. We talked about this on an earlier show of ours, either last week or a couple weeks ago, I think. And we were like, yeah, that's going to be like a whole show type thing. that we do in the future. And here it is, guys. We are going to talk a lot about the conference expansion talk. We're going to talk about all the things that have been coming out about the ACC. If you guys follow ACC Media Days, they had a meeting down in Florida where all the athletic directors go and meet, and they talk about certain things. A lot of things were talked about down there. I'm sure things like unequal revenue share were talked about down there that we'll get into tonight. And a lot of people have been saying that the ACC is dead. It's just a matter of time. So we will give our opinions on that here tonight, and we'll get into all kind of the little nuances that go into it, and we may have somewhat of a elementary understanding of kind of all the things that go into that, but a very elementary understanding of it. But we will do our best here tonight on this show to give our opinions and what we think about what's going to go on and what's going to happen in the next couple years in the ACC with Clemson and other major programs within the ACC. So let's lead it off with this, okay? We had the ACC meetings down in Florida. There were a couple interviews that came out of that. There was a lot of noise, a lot of news that came out of that. And we've spent the past 2 off seasons. So you think back a couple years ago, that's when the big splash news of conference expansion kind of hit the college football world for the first time, right? And that was, Oklahoma and Texas leaving the Big 12 and going to the SEC. And then that was directly followed up the next offseason by USC and UCLA heading to the Big 10, right? Now we are on our 3rd offseason since, and the ACC is the talk of the town for conference expansion, for I guess unhappy programs with the revenue sharing, with the amount of money that's coming in from TV deals and such. So I'll lead it off with a question for you, Jordan. Do you think any big news like the past 2 off seasons is going to hit before we start playing games in the fall, as far as the ACC goes and as far as conference expansion goes?
No. And I think because there's a huge difference, obviously, it's been the biggest talking point through all of this. When you think about, USC and UCLA going to the Big Ten, when you think about Texas and Oklahoma going to the SEC, the media rights deals that they were leaving, obviously, were not as long and not nearly as significantly long as what the ACC is currently locked into. And that's kind of been the thing that's holding these teams, where they're at.
Yep.
And because of that, there doesn't seem to be any way, at least currently, to get out of that. Obviously, the meetings were very cryptic. Very little stuff has come out about what is going on. Obviously, we know that there are at least 7 schools that have come out in some way or form to kind of combat the media rights deal, or at least review the ACC's grant of rights deal. And I believe those schools are Clemson, Florida State, Virginia Tech, North Carolina, NC State, and
Miami.
Yes. So those 7 schools we have been confirmed, and I've also heard Louisville has been in there as well.
Louisville would be the 8th team.
Yeah. So Louisville is in there as well. These schools are coming out to kind of, sort of, review the grant of rights and kind of see if there's any sort of way out. These past 2 days of meetings have not really proven to be fruitful, it doesn't seem.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a whole lot of trust in there going on right now. Just hearing some of the some of the responses and the interviews from athletic directors, it seems like there was this kind of silent understanding that they came together and they were like, well, we want to stay together and we're going to do whatever it takes to further the best interest of the ACC and all of that. But then when you listen to the athletic directors speak, there's very, very coded language in there. They're saying all the same stuff, but there's also there's the buts. It's like, well, we are a very loyal ACC member, but we're going to, like Graham Neff, for example, but we're going to continue to do what's best for Clemson. And so, when you hear stuff like that, it's clear that there's a lot of uneasiness and there's a fake sense of loyalty, but in reality, it's kind of like we're going to be team players until the team is no longer good for us to be on.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where we're at right now. And there's not really any way for the schools to really move forward with this, at least in the near future, which is why I don't think there's going to be any sort of news before the season starts. I think this is going to be a slow developing process. And, whether the schools find a way out or not, we still got a little ways to go before this is all settled down. And I don't think it's going to be resolved by the time the season's here.
Yeah. So let me say this. I don't think anything's resolved by the time the season is here. What I will say about this is one of the big things that I think coming out of media days was you heard the FSU athletic director talk about the unequal revenue sharing and how some talks of that has been picked up, and it's been better received than I guess he thought it would be, according to him. But we all know that an unequal revenue sharing model is not a sustainable thing for a conference. So I do think that it's possible that the ACC moves to an unequal revenue sharing model. However, I think that furthers the argument for the ACC is done. Because if the ACC does move to an unequal revenue sharing model for the top end of the conference, I think that spells for, let's be honest. The FSUs, the Clemsons, the North Carolina States, the UNCs, the Virginia, whoever it is, Miami, whoever it is at the top of the conference that is going to benefit from the unequal revenue share, that spells disaster for the conference. That's not a sustainable model. And I think that just speaks to the biggest brands of the conference getting as much money as they can while they bide their time to survey other options, to get with their lawyers about the TV deal, about the TV rights deal, and getting out of the conference. I don't think it solves any issues for the ACC as a conference. Yes, does it make it better for teams like Florida State and Clemson? For sure. Miami, yes. North Carolina, yes. North Carolina State, whoever's in that group of the top of the ACC. Temporarily, it makes it better for those teams. But overall, as a conference, I believe it makes it even more so that the conference is going to be no longer in the near future. What do you think?
Yeah. And I think the biggest issue, and it was kind of telling by some of the comments that ACC Commissioner Jim Phillips made afterward. He said a lot of stuff that was really interesting. He was like, "We encourage our schools to review these grant of rights and all of that. We encourage our schools to come to us about concerns and all of that." And the translation to me was kind of like, you can go and review this grant of rights if you want. We've got better lawyers than you. And so you can go and do it if you want. It kind of reminds me of like, your boss telling you that you're welcome to come to him with concerns about your salary or something like that. And it's like we encourage our employees to come to us about problems they're having in the workplace and their compensation and all of that. And we're willing to work with them for better solutions and all of that. And it just sounds like a bunch of, yeah, you can try to come to us, but you're not going to get what you want. So I think that's the biggest obstacle right now, and it's really hard to find a way to, especially with an unequal revenue sharing model. It's kind of hard to see how that's going to work. I think it would be great for the schools and at least the schools at the top, but there's not much incentive for the programs at the bottom. I mean, to take less money just to stay in the conference they're in, because at the end of the day, the schools at the bottom of the ACC aren't interested in competing in football. So there's really no incentive for them to say, oh, well, we're just going to give you more money. We're going to give you more money so we can stay in this conference that we don't necessarily care about competing in, at least in football. So there's a lot of obstacles right now. Not really clear where all of this is going to go and how these schools are going to be able to navigate all of that. So
right. And there's been a lot of talk in the national media. There's been a lot of talk on YouTube about, hey, the Magnificent Seven, right? That's kind of what it's been pitched at, as the Magnificent Seven. You mentioned the teams before. It's Miami, Florida State, Clemson, North Carolina State, and Virginia Tech, right? Those are kind of the teams in the Magnificent Seven that are kind of what, at least my understanding of it has been that they have told their lawyers to look at the deal, the grant of rights deal that is the binding contract for the ACC, right? So all these schools, at least these seven schools have looked at the grant of rights deal. They petitioned their lawyers to look at this grant of rights deal. And I look, I'm not a lawyer. You're not a lawyer. Nobody here on YouTube that I know of is a lawyer or understands any of the speak, nor do we have privy to the document that is the ACC grant of rights deal. That thing's locked up like it's the Declaration of Independence, dude. Like this thing is locked and key, dude. Nobody can get a copy of the grant of rights deal, so nobody really knows what it says or any loopholes that may be there when it comes to the legality of everything. So all these lawyers have obviously, from these seven schools, have gone up there and looked at the grant of rights deal and have kind of reviewed it for what it says. But none of us are privy to that information. And what I will say is that it's going to be a battle. The ACC is not going to roll over and just take their biggest brands leaving the ACC. It's going to take some turmoil. Okay. And I heard, I've heard people talk about, maybe teams having to, and you can tell me what you think about this, but I've heard talk about teams maybe getting out of it and becoming independent for a shorter period of time to bide their time through that deal. What do you think about that? There's been some talk about that.
Yeah, I've heard that too. I think that's viable for a very select few programs in college football, and you would certainly need to find a way to strike your own media rights deal. I mean, Notre Dame obviously is the one prime example of that, but their deal has been in place for decades, and they've established their brand as an independent for decades. It would be much more difficult for a school that has really never been independent, even Clemson, who's had as much success as they've had, to really survive as an independent. Because Notre Dame is a huge national brand. They are ingrained within the history of college football. You cannot tell the story of college football without talking about Notre Dame.
That's
so they
true.
have they have all of that. Mm-hmm. I just don't think in this day and age being independent is a viable option for schools if you want to stay competitive at the top of college football, because it's not going to happen. I don't think that would be a solution. You're better off staying where you are, because I don't think that any deal you could strike up would be worth at least worth what you're getting staying in the conference. So, but this is a really tentative situation. So I mean, we don't really know, and I don't have all the numbers, so I couldn't tell you what the logistics are and what it would mean for a school to be independent. But based on everything, my limited knowledge, it would be very tough for a school,
Right.
Any of the schools in the ACC to break off as an independent, even for a short period of time.
Yeah, and I think it would be especially hard for a school like Clemson. Clemson is a smaller school. They are a smaller state school, and I don't know if that's a viable option for them. And because this is a Clemson channel, obviously we are going to talk mostly about them. But at the same time, it's just there's a lot of moving pieces to this. And I at the same time I do think where there's smoke there's fire. The ACC is in trouble. They know they're in trouble. They absolutely know they're in trouble. I think they got slapped in the face in this meeting down in Florida with the athletic directors. I think some of the big guns in the ACC went into that meeting and they're like, "Hey, this ain't gonna work, dude. This ain't gonna work. We're making $35 million a year, and the SEC and the Big Ten are about to make, anywhere from 30, 35, 40, $45 million more a year than us of revenue. That's not sustainable year over year. When you stack up those kind of numbers, when you're competing for the same recruits, when you're competing for the same recruiting pool as these type of teams, it's not sustainable for big time college football teams in the ACC. And as we know, in college, football is king. Football makes the most revenue. Football is what supports all the other sports in college. Clemson knows that. Florida State knows that. Miami knows that. And that's why they're starting to make noise. We cannot sustain making $30 to $40 million less than the SEC and the Big Ten teams. It's not sustainable for Clemson, especially when you talk about a media rights deal that is through. When does the Clemson or when does the ACC media rights? 2036. 2036. We are in 2023. That's 13 years down the road, right? That's 13 years down the road. There is no way. And then some of these media deals, and here's the real crux of it for me as a college football fan, just like outside looking in. Obviously, I'm not a lawyer. Obviously, I don't know all the financials that go into all of it. But a lot of these deals that the SEC, the Big Ten, even the Big 12 that are signing, they're renegotiating these deals again before the ACC deal is up. So not only are they making $30 to $40 million more a year per program than the ACC schools, but they're going to renegotiate again before the ACC's media rights deal's done with ESPN. So it's extremely unsustainable for any team in the ACC, especially the teams at the top that really take football serious.
Absolutely. And I wanted to ask you this because this is the only thing I can think of, and it would take a monumental effort. But what if, what if Clemson started a get out of the ACC campaign, like IPTAY and like started a get out of the ACC campaign, and Graham Neff goes and publicly campaigns and asks for fans and donors to donate money to help Clemson. It would take a monumental effort, but I do think if there's any fan base in this conference that could do something like that, I think it would be Clemson. I think Florida State could probably do it too, because
Florida
I
State
think
for sure. Yeah,
there's a And really, it's just because of the Clemson fan base and their apathy at best towards the ACC in general. I
Yeah.
mean, if you look at the history, I mean, Clemson is a founding member of the ACC. All of that,
Yeah.
all of the history that's tied in, but the fan base has never really had much love for the conference, and
No.
for obvious reasons. Clemson being the school that focused on football, and the ACC was always considered a basketball conference. The Tobacco Road schools seem always got preferential treatment
Yep.
in decision making and all of that. You go back
Hmm.
to the '80s and the decision that the conference made when Clemson was hit with those recruiting violations after their first national championship. Just all of that. There's a lot of built up grudge,
Yep.
anger, apathy, all of that has kind of been swirling around in the minds of Clemson fans for decades. And even going back, even if you just go back the last 10 years, I mean, Clemson
Hmm.
has been really the only thing keeping the conference afloat as far as national relevance in football. And the decisions that have been made in those years, it's clear that the rest of the conference, at least a lot of schools within the rest of the conference, aren't interested in holding up their end of the bargain. So it just there's not much incentive for Clemson to really want to fight hard to stay in the ACC. I mean,
Right.
if you can find a way to work it out and you get and work it out in the ACC and all of that, I mean, that's great. But if the ACC dies, it dies, and I think that's kind of the mentality that
Yeah.
the school has, and definitely the fan base has.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot there to unpack with what you just said, and and I do think Clemson is one of those schools that has the alumni base to be able to maintain something like that, to maintain kind of an act of protest, if you will, to the ACC and kind of their governing body and the way that they have conducted themselves as a conference for the past 10, 20 years. They have not conducted themselves in a way for a sustainable conference. They are not the ACC has not been very good at being a forward looking conference when it comes to the decision makers for the ACC. They sacrificed so much when it came to launching the ACC network. Like the ACC thought that launching the ACC network would be their savior, but that was a grave miscalculation on their part. It did not save them, nor is it going to. I believe 100% that the major brands in the ACC, and that includes Clemson, Florida State, Miami, name any other team you want that is a major player in the ACC, I believe they are leaving the ACC regardless. I honestly, like, I'm going to be real. I don't think there's anything right now that the ACC could do to save their big brands from leaving their conference. I honestly think that the brands like Clemson, North Carolina State, Miami, Florida State,
North Carolina.
North Carolina, I think those brands are literally negotiating at this point in order to make as much money as they can and gain as much revenue as they can. But they are like, I don't believe any of these brands see their future in the ACC. I think these teams have already made up their mind. These programs, these colleges, these institutions, if you will, have already made up their mind. They are leaving the ACC. The ACC is dead as we know it right now. Now, it's going to take a lot of work. You got the grant rights deal. You have all of those things that are going to have to be navigated, very carefully through litigation and things like that. But I do not see any major brand staying in the ACC. I don't see any major brand being in the ACC in 5 years. I really don't. I think they've made up their mind. I think the ACC has made too many bad decisions as a conference in order to keep any major brand. And they will be poached by either the Big Ten, the SEC,
The Big 12.
the Big 12 will probably poach some teams. The Big 12 is trying to stay alive. They are trying to stay alive. So, and that's kind of why Louisville is kind of becoming maybe that eighth team, because I think Louisville, may be an attractive brand for the Big 12. I think that could be a thing as well. So, but if you're asking me, I I honestly don't see how the ACC survives, no matter what they do. They can do unequal revenue share. They can do whatever they want to do. Notre Dame's never going to join the ACC. They were never going to join the ACC. The biggest opportunity for the ACC was in 2020 when the COVID year happened. They could have stronged armed Notre Dame into something, or Notre Dame could have set out that season. But instead, the ACC folded to Notre Dame for whatever reason. I don't understand it. I don't think any ACC fan or team understands why the ACC folded and allowed them to become a part of the conference for 1 year. What did the 2020 season benefit the ACC when it comes to Notre Dame?
I mean, other than you had two really big matchups in the regular season that did numbers, but outside of that, you didn't get anything long term out of it. And the Notre Dame got to play in a conference and compete for the playoff and make the playoff. They were given an avenue to do that. And if things had gone differently, they could have won a conference championship. If it wasn't for Clemson.
They would have been the only team to ever not be in a conference and win a conference championship.
Yeah.
I mean, how ridiculous does that sound? Like, how weak does that make the ACC? Like, they may be the weakest conference ever when it comes to backbone of standing up to programs.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't understand it. Everybody wants to bag on the Pac-12. The problem with the Pac-12 is it's just most college football fans live on the East Coast. Most people that care about college football live on the East Coast. That's why the Pac-12 as a conference struggles so much, because they play late, they're on the West Coast, and most people that care about college football are hours ahead of them, and they don't watch the games. That's why the Pac-12 struggles. Why does the ACC struggle? The ACC struggles because the people making decisions made horrible decisions. They're literally in the middle of the Southeast, the thickest college football. That's where college football was born. That's where it thrives, is on the East Coast, specifically in the Southeast. And you're making terrible decisions, and it's going to cost you the conference. I think the ACC's done. I really do. As the conference that we know it right now, at least.
Yeah. It really is just it seems kind of like an if, it doesn't seem like an if, it just seems like a win. So it could be pretty soon, or it could be several years from now. But I don't really like where things are trending unless something monumental happens. So, but at the end of the day, we're just two idiots on
for sure.
on YouTube. So we don't have any expertise on any of this, but there, and at the end of the day, everyone at least most of the people in here are Clemson fans first. Yeah. Wherever Clemson ends up, it's that doesn't matter. It's really about just what's in the best interest of Clemson.
That's it.
If the ACC goes, the ACC goes. We don't have the emotional ties to the conference that maybe some of the like the North Carolina schools might have, but I think we've exhausted pretty much all we can on this. And it's not fun it's not necessarily fun to talk about, because you want to talk about the football aspect and not necessarily all the ugly behind the scenes stuff, the money and all that drives this sport that we watch. And because at the end of the day, it is an entertainment product, and there's a lot of suits and guys that have more money than we'll see in our lifetime making decisions on how this sport is going to evolve. So
I mean, and to your point there, it is absolutely insane to me. Like, let's think back, I don't know, maybe 5-6 years ago. If anyone told you let's say 8 years ago, that college football would look like it looks right now, you would have called them absolutely insane. It's insane how quickly college football has changed. And I know it's a money game, and there's no way to get the cat back in the bag. It's about, media rights deals. It's about, TV revenue. It's about conference expanding. College football is never going to be the same. So for people like maybe me and you, for people that have followed college football their entire lives, and like I guess the purity of college football and what it used to be, it's never going to be that again. And unfortunately, we're just going to have to get used to it. We're going to have to get over it. I'm never going to stop watching college football because I love it too much. But I don't exactly like where college football is right now. You can give me your opinion on it, but I don't exactly like where college football is heading. But money talks, and that's kind of where we are in the world of college football. And I honestly think we're heading to, maybe 2 or 3 super conferences in college football. We're already heading to a 12-team college football playoff next season. Not next season, obviously, but the season following that one. Next season is the last, 4-team college football playoff, and then we're on to a 12-team format. So that furthers the conversation of, teams maybe becoming independent, because you don't necessarily need to be in a conference in order to enter the 12-team playoff anymore. You don't get an automatic bid, but let's say the ACC dissolves, maybe a big brand like a Florida State, a Miami, a Clemson could survive a year or two in that format with the college football playoff revenue, in order to get into another conference to survive the media rights deal. I don't know. That's all talk that's been out there. I don't know, man. It's complicated. I'm sure the lawyers will work it out, but as we all know, when things get wrapped up into court, it gets expensive, and you're going to have to rely on boosters to pay those bills, because the school's not going to pay them.
No, no.
So it's going to be crazy. There's changes coming. There's massive changes coming. I think the ACC is in trouble, and I don't see it surviving. Any more than like 3 to 5 more years. I honestly don't. So we'll see where it goes. We'll see. We'll see how it works out, man. But the ACC schools, especially at the top of the conference, they can't survive 30 to 40 million dollar deficits. Especially when you look at the new recruiting, unlimited visits, unlimited official visits for recruits. There's other things in college football that are changing, that people don't necessarily factor in. That's one of the changes that just happened, was the unlimited official visits, and that's funded by the school. So where's that money coming from, right? It's a lot easier for a school in the SEC and the Big Ten to, fit the bill for unlimited official visits for recruits than it is for an ACC team that's making, half of that money from revenue. So it's crazy times in college football, man. It's crazy times. But
Yep, we'll see how it plays. We'll see how it plays out. All right, let's go ahead and move on. I think the audience has definitely probably had enough of this conversation.
Oh, for sure. All right, let's move on to our next topic tonight, and we are going to turn our tables into Clemson football. Not Clemson football like you guys think, but Clemson football in the wake of Clemson former assistants, whether that be defensive coordinators, offensive coordinators, fired offensive coordinators and how they will perform as head coaches here in major college football. So get your votes into the chat. What Dabo Swinney, former assistant, will perform the best this coming college football season? This fall, we're looking at this next season. Who's going to perform the best as a Dabo Swinney, former assistant? We got on the docket, we got Tony Elliott at Virginia. We got Brent Venables over at Oklahoma. And we got who else? Who else?
One Billy Napier at the University of Florida.
Yo.
Yeah, we're counting him for today because I thought it was really interesting. There are 3 former Dabo assistants that are currently FBS head coaches, and they're all going into their second season at their current jobs, and they are all coming off of disappointing years.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Which of those 3 do you guys think is going to have the best year? Because I think it's really interesting, and the reason I was the one that brought this topic up when we were discussing the show, for tonight, and because there's this narrative about Dabo and the program about, Dabo's only been successful because of his assistants and all of that, and outside of his footprint, he hasn't really had very many successful assistants. I mean, Billy Napier has arguably been, well, not even really arguably, he's been the most successful because, he was at Louisiana before. After being fired by Clemson, he had multiple coordinator jobs, eventually worked his way into a head coaching position at Louisiana where he had a lot of success there, won multiple Sun Belt titles, was consistently winning, 10 plus games at Louisiana. So, and he earned his way into the Florida head coaching job. But outside of that, there hasn't been really a successful story as far as a former Dabo assistant. You've had Chad Morris, who, went off to SMU after 2014 and then worked his way into the Arkansas job where he probably had the worst the worst performance I think I've ever seen.
It was bad
at Arkansas. I don't think he beat a single Power 5 team while he was there. And just set that program back a huge amount. You think of a guy like Jeff Scott, who after 2019 took the job at South Florida, obviously a program that was kind of in the toilet, wasn't really able to dig them out, and he got fired this past season. So, and the reason I brought it up is because I've found it interesting, just kind of observing Clemson assistants after they've left Clemson to see how successful they are outside of the Dabo footprint. Because of that narrative that, Dabo is only the product of the great assistants that he's had, and that the model of success that he's had is solely dependent on those guys. And so far, that doesn't seem to be the case. It seems like these coaches are not nearly as successful once they leave Dabo's footprint. But again, Billy Napier is going into his second year at Florida. The first year was not great. Brent Venables heading into his second year at Oklahoma, and his second year as a head coach, period. So the jury is definitely still out. Tony Elliott at Virginia as well, second season at Virginia, second season as a head coach. So I'm really interested to see how it plays out. So what do you guys think? Who do you guys think is going to be the most successful this year? Because I think these are prove-it years for all 3 of those guys.
100% prove-it years. 100% prove-it years for every single one of these coaches. And I guess I'll start off with kind of my opinions, and then we'll let the chat get in here with kind of their opinions. I see a lot of Brent Venables in the chat. I don't see any Tony Elliott in the chat. No love for Tony Elliott in the chat. So that's kind of interesting to me. Not interesting in the fact that look, Tony Elliott's career at Clemson was great, and I think it was really hampered by his last season at Clemson. It was not great. Let's not pretend it was great at all. But Tony Elliott did a lot of good things at Clemson. Okay. And a lot of people will point to the fact that when Jeff Scott left, the offense didn't look the same. Okay. And there may be some validity to the fact that Elliott's offense at Clemson did not look the same when Jeff Scott left. And I may agree with a lot of that, but it does not change the fact that Tony Elliott led 2 national championship teams to the title, and not only led them to the title, but won 2 national championships. Okay. He was the offensive coordinator for the greatest run in Clemson football history. So I think he deserves a little bit more respect than Clemson football fans may give him. I do agree that, some of his play calling got questionable at the end. Maybe it got vanilla. Maybe he didn't evolve as a play caller as much as we would have liked him to. Maybe he started resting on his laurels, or, just not implementing enough change to keep defenses on their toes. I do agree with that. However, I do think Tony Elliott is a great coach. He's a great developmental coach. I think he is a he's a development of men. I think he can absolutely be a good thing for Virginia. Now, on the other end, you got Brent Venables, a fiery coach. This dude will get into every single player. He will tell you exactly what he thinks. He does not hold back. He is a absolute. He's kind of a, not really a Nick Saban type, but kind of that string of coach, right? Where just he kind of challenges players more so than a Tony Elliott, more so than a Wes Goodwin type of guy, right? He gets in, he's in your face, he challenges players. He's a passionate coach, right? So sometimes that kind of electrifies players. And then you got a Billy Napier that was fired early on by Dabo Swinney in Florida. Did not have a great season at Florida at all. That team was underperforming for sure for the talent that they had on the roster. If I had to pick one to have the best bounce back season, I'm going to put them in order here for you. I'm going to go Brent Venables. The reason that I say Brent Venables, I'm not just going to say it just Brent Venables and then go through my other ones. Brent Venables for the fact that just his defensive knowledge. I do not believe that Oklahoma's defense will repeat the defensive performance that they had on the field last season. I don't believe that. I think Brent Venables is one of the greatest defensive minds in the game of college football. He may be only second to a Kirby Smart. And he may not be second to Kirby Smart. Yes, he's not had the success that Kirby Smart has had as a head coach, but as a defensive coordinator, I would take Brent Venables any day over any defensive coordinator in the country. Like if I was constructing Clemson's roster right now, as far as coaches go, Brent Venables would be my number one choice for defensive coordinator over Kirby Smart, just because I like the guy's fire. The dude is an absolute animal when it comes to coaching people up, and he is a guy that can take personnel and mold his scheme to the personnel that he has. And that's why I think that Oklahoma's defense will be so much more improved this coming season. And that's why I think he will be the most successful coach heading into the 2023 season. And when we're looking back on the 2023 season, I think he will have the best coaching resume coming out of that season. Number 2, I'll go Tony Elliott. I believe in Tony Elliott. I know a lot of Clemson fans don't believe in Tony Elliott, but you cannot discount the fact that this dude performed in big-time games for a long time for Clemson. And did his offense get stale? Yes. But I believe he can evolve as a coach. I believe he is looking within. Brandon Armstrong did not perform well as a quarterback. You cannot put that all on the coach. Sometimes, it's got to be player and coach as well. Brandon Armstrong did not play well last season. You cannot put that all on Tony Elliott just because he had a down year at Clemson and then went to Virginia, and Brandon Armstrong didn't play well. Brandon Armstrong didn't play well at Virginia last season. So you can't put that all on Tony Elliott. I think he'll be number 2, and then Billy Napier will be number 3. The reason being is because I just think Florida is a circus right now, man. Billy Napier, I don't know what's going on at Florida right now. There was the whole thing with the recruiting thing back and forth, and then it's just been a circus. Headline story after headline story at Florida. I don't think he's going to be successful there for whatever reason. I don't know if the the administration's not bought in or the players aren't bought in. But honestly, I think it'll be Brent Venables 1, Tony Elliott 2, and then Billy Napier 3. I just don't think he has the buy-in at Florida that he's going to need in order to be successful there. And he may be well over his head there as well, even though he was really good in Louisiana. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah. My list is kind of, it's close to yours. I think we agree on the first. I'm going to go with Brent Venables number 1.
Okay.
And for a lot of the reasons that you stated, but also I think the recruiting class that they brought in, the options they have at quarterback. They bring back Dylan Gabriel, who's an experienced quarterback. He's played a lot of football. But they also have the 5-star freshman in Jackson Arnold coming in, who I think could end up being the best in that class. He won the Elite 11 MVP, all of that. He put up insane performances in high school. I'm really high on him, and I think that he has having a guy like Jackson Arnold in the room definitely makes things a lot more interesting for Oklahoma. And again, I think the defense is definitely going to improve. And just the Big 12 schedule. I think there's a lot of opportunities for Oklahoma to get some wins. I thought they improved a lot over the course of the season. And, you watched that bowl game against Florida State, that Cheez-It Bowl. Leading into the game, a lot of people thought that Florida State team was going to run right through them, and it wasn't going to be much of a game. But
they did not.
Yeah, they didn't lay down. They had a lot of opportunities to win that game. So I think the team grew. They got shut out 49-0 by Texas early in the year. To go from that to hanging with a 10-win Florida State team in a bowl game, I think there was a lot of growth last season. I'm still skeptical about some of the coaching staff that Venables has on the defensive side of the ball, but I do think they'll definitely be improved, understanding his system a little bit more. So I'm going to go Venables number 1. Number 2, I'm going to go with Billy Napier. And the reason why is really it just comes to a talent thing. I do think Florida's roster has been I think people underrate the talent on Florida's roster. I think people because they weren't very successful last season, I think people forget that they've recruited really well. Billy Napier brought in a really nice recruiting class. Their offensive line was one of their strengths last season. And they have some really dynamic running backs. They bring in Graham Mertz from the transfer portal. I'm not a huge Graham Mertz fan, but I do think there's some talent there. And if they can get more out of him than Wisconsin was able to, I think that could be a plus, for them as well. The only thing is obviously they're playing an SEC schedule. They got to deal with Georgia in their division and Tennessee, obviously, and South Carolina and Kentucky are teams that have made some additions as well and are bringing some really good quarterbacks into the fray. So it's going to be tough for Napier, but I do think there's a decent chance, just given Florida's talent, that they could have some guys pop on the offensive side of the ball. And defensively, I think they're going to be a lot better than they've been in recent years. So I'm going to go. I haven't sold all my Billy Napier stock like maybe some people have. And then number 3, I'm going to go with Tony Elliott. I think the biggest thing is there doesn't seem to me a lot of answers on the offensive side of the ball for Virginia right now. They brought in Kobe Pace from the transfer portal, but they lost a lot on the offensive line. They don't really – obviously, Brennan Armstrong transfers out. He's now at NC State. And I'm not really sold on either of the quarterbacks that are gunning for the job right now. I believe Woolfolk and Musket are the 2 guys. And I don't know. There just doesn't seem to be much going on. And I think that they've lost some receiver talent this past year as well. But defensively, I thought they showed a lot of promise last year, and maybe they can continue that. They've lost some pieces to the transfer portal on that side of the ball as well. So it's kind of hard to see Virginia being one of the top teams in the conference, or really even being one of the middle teams. I just
Right.
They haven't made enough. They haven't made enough additions for me to really feel confident that they're going to be much better than they were last year. So I'm going. I got to go Venables, Napier, Elliott in that order. I don't see it with Virginia, but I'm rooting for Tony Elliott for sure, especially given what that team went through last year with the tragedy and all of that. So it would be really awesome to see Virginia have a bounce back year, but I don't see it right now.
Yeah, I think. Hey, good night, John Sarian. Thank you for tuning in, man.
No, he's not. He's not going. He's saying good night to Felipe.
Okay, my bad.
Our resident Florida State fan. Well, one of our resident Florida State fans. He's going to the FSU chat. So, thanks, Felipe, for tuning in. Appreciate you.
Okay. Question for me, Tiger Paul. Do you think Dabo will ever use the portal?
Well, yes.
Yeah. Well,
we know what you mean.
He has used the portal, yes. But I know what you mean. And yes, I do think Dabo will use the portal. Here's the thing with Dabo Swinney. Dabo Swinney is always going to build his team through the lens of high school football. He's always going to offer high school football prospects over portal prospects. He's always going to build his team in that way. And I do think that limits Clemson some, but as long as it's working, I'm okay with it. But here's the other thing. I don't think Dabo Swinney's necessarily against the transfer portal as much as people think he is. I think he just believes in building players from the ground up. I think he believes in recruiting high school players and developing them into playing for Clemson, right? Learning the system, buying your time, getting in the weight room, doing your conditioning, doing mat drills, and developing into a player that can contribute for Clemson. Not everybody rolls into college ready to start day one. Not everybody's a Peter Woods, right? Not everybody's a Christian Wilkins, okay? There's not a lot of players out there like that. You got a guy that just got drafted in the NFL. What's his name? Defensive end. What was his name?
KJ Henry.
KJ Henry. Oh my goodness. Yeah, that dude that had to develop as a prospect at Clemson for multiple years, 4+ years, and now he's drafted into the NFL, and he's probably going to be a big time starter for in the NFL for a long time to come. Okay, so there's something to be said. There's something to be said about those players. I believe in KJ Henry. He's going to be a starter in the league for a long time to come, in my opinion. But no. I'm not trying to run you off, John Sarian. I'm not trying to run you off. I thought you were leaving. My bad. But I do think Dabo Swinney will dabble in the portal. Dabble. Hey, look at that. In the portal. You see what I did there? Yeah. More so than he has done in the past as the COVID stuff subsides. Look, I don't think people talk enough, Jordan, about how the COVID year has affected roster management in major college football. It was a problem for Clemson this season. Look no further than Dabo literally getting killed for talking about taking walk-on scholarships away because we were over the scholarship limit coming into this summer, like through spring coming into the summer. Dabo Swinney got killed for even mentioning the fact that, hey, maybe we'll have to take a couple walk-on scholarships away that are year to year, by the way, in order to make the 85 scholarship rule that is the NCAA's rule, right? So I think part of it is the COVID that has not allowed Clemson, with people coming back, to really exercise their ability to take transfer portal guys, right? We didn't have any spots this season. We had too many guys come back that Dabo Swinney truly thought were going to go to the NFL draft. He truly thought that, um, Tyler Davis. He thought Tyler Davis was going to the NFL. He thought that other guys were going to the NFL, and they did not go. So we did not have roster spots in order to really explore the transfer portal at all. So I think if you see an offseason where Clemson has roster spots, I think Dabo Swinney will absolutely supplement his roster with transfer portal guys. But he's not going to change his tactics. He's going to take guys. He's going to take graduate transfers first. He's going to take guys that fit the Clemson program first, and that's never going to change. So if people are looking for that to happen, that's never going to change with Dabo Swinney. As long as he's at Clemson, he's going to have a certain criteria for players that he recruits, whether it be high school players or whether it be graduate transfers or whether it be just portal players. He's going to have a certain criteria that those guys have to meet in order to be, quote unquote, recruited by the Clemson program. And I know a lot has been said about Dabo Swinney's tactics in recruiting and how he likes a firm commitment, and you don't go to any other schools. You don't take any other official visits once you commit to Clemson. I think there's a lot to be said about that, and I think it does resonate with a certain amount of recruits that when Clemson offers you, it's a committable offer. It's a serious offer. What do you think, Jordan?
Yeah, Clemson, their recruiting and what makes them unique is kind of what drives a lot of what makes Clemson a special place. And there are things that certainly Dabo I think does need to change. Obviously, using the transfer portal is probably the biggest one, or being more open to using it and using it to address needs and being a little bit more aggressive. But there are a lot of things that the school does, that Dabo does, that allow Clemson to be as successful as they've been. I mean, it's if you're the head coach at Clemson, and this has been true historically, you have to do it a little bit differently than everybody else. I mean, even Danny Ford, when he was at Clemson, said it. It's a different job. It's just given the where it's situated, the resources, all of that, the program dynamics, all of that. It makes Clemson a really unique place to be a head coach at. And one of the things that you have to do is tailor your coaching methods and strategy to the uniqueness of Clemson. And that's that's what the great coaches in Clemson history have done. And that's certainly what Dabo has done, and to the best of them all. So at the end of the day, we can all complain and all of that, but there's a reason that Dabo does some of the things he does. And things will have to change, but there are certainly things that the wholesale changes that maybe some fans want as far as how Clemson does things. I don't think it's
not going to happen.
The best thing.
It's not going to happen. Not me says Dabo is in it for the right reasons. Yes. Yeah. 100%. Question for you, Jordan Bowman. Do you see any Tigers hitting the portal over the summer? If so, who?
I haven't gotten any. There isn't really any way for players to enter the portal because they're obviously with the windows that we have. that's already the window for players to enter the transfer portal. I believe it closed closed last week, I think, or a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago.
So I think grad transfers are probably the only exception, but but other than that, no, I don't expect anybody to hit the portal. If anybody was going to hit the portal, it would have been a couple of weeks ago. So Clemson is currently, I think they're at 87 scholarships.
87. Yep.
So we'll see how that works out. I know. Liam Boyd, the walk-on kicker that hit that 52-yarder in the spring game, he transferred to UNC. So shout out to Luke Walker in the chat. You got who I think is a pretty big leg.
Yep.
So congrats to you. I mean, he's a North Carolina kid. You know, being a walk-on in out-of-state tuition at Clemson is certainly no joke. Having to pay that, so I kind of understand if that was one of the motivations for transferring. So best of luck to Liam Boyd. Maybe we'll definitely see him when North Carolina travels down to Death Valley this season. So
yep.
I wanted to throw that out there. But no, I don't expect anybody to hit the portal. I think Clemson is pretty much done as far as that goes. If there's anybody that wants to enter the portal, they wouldn't be eligible to play this season. So
right.
maybe
yep.
maybe down the line towards as we get closer to fall, and somebody decides to enter, that could happen. But I don't have any indication that there are any players that are looking to leave anytime soon. So. All right. Do you want to close the show out with some recruiting talk?
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, yeah, absolutely. Let's talk some recruiting. We got a big June visit coming to Clemson, and I think you got some news for us as far as our June visit and some possible commits, or at a minimum, who's coming to see Clemson's campus. And maybe not fall in love with Clemson and what we got going on down here in the upstate of South Carolina.
Well, we've had this week we've had 3 big time recruits confirm that they will be attending the June 2nd official visit weekend this week. 5-star defensive lineman Edric Houston out of Beaufort, Georgia. Guy that Clemson has been on a really long time. He seems to really enjoy the school. He has a really good relationship with Nick Eason and Lemansky Hall. So I think that's really good. He seems to like what coaches are telling him about where he wants to play and all of that. He doesn't appear to have a leader right now. Alabama is in there. Georgia is in there as well. There's a lot of big time schools involved in his recruitment. But Clemson getting that first official visit weekend could be huge, and they have a really good chance to set the bar high. So he confirmed he'll be there. Also, 5-star safety KJ Bolden will be attending as well. He's a guy that, again, I mean, he's a 5-star, so he has a lot of big time offers, but he's giving Clemson the time of day, and I think that's a big deal as well. And then also 5-star wide receiver Mike Matthews will be in attendance as well. So those 3 guys have confirmed that they will be attending this week. I think that it's huge for Clemson to get as many of these guys on campus as possible, because that just seems to be what Clemson does best. I mean, you go back to last cycle and the loaded recruiting weekend, official visit weekend they had in June last year, and all the commits, the run of commits from June through July that Clemson got right, after that. I think that's where Clemson does its work. And when these guys come to campus, they just get the reviews are always fantastic. And Clemson is definitely one of the best at hosting recruits for official visits, and they leave a really, really strong impression. And that's something that Dabo has really made an emphasis on.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to mention those guys. Plenty more. Braylon Staley as well. He officially announced that he will be there as well. The in-state wide receiver, guy I'm really, really high on. Super, super fast. Definitely a wide receiver that Clemson could use in their room. I mean, they've certainly been missing that kind of really elite speed for a while. So happy to get him on there as well. Also, 4-star wide receiver in Clemson target Alex Taylor. He announced his commitment date will be July 29th. So I believe he plans to take all his official visits. He will be at the official visit weekend as well. It seems to be Clemson. Clemson is in it. NC State, North Carolina. Those guys seem to be the primary. Those schools seem to be the primary factors in his recruitment. And I feel good about where Clemson is right now. But he plans to take all his official visits, do his due diligence. But he plans to commit on July 29th. So wanted to throw that out there. And also Corian Gibson, the 4-star cornerback out of Texas, who will also be at the official visit weekend. He plans to take all of his official visits as well. And he wants to commit sometime in July as well. And another guy that I'm really high on, elite speed. And he definitely fits the mold of a Mike Reed corner. I think he would be a really, really nice get as well. But yeah, that kind of wraps up what I had for recruiting. If you guys have any questions recruiting wise, please leave those in the chat. I see some of you guys have already dropped some as well.
Yeah.
When does Sammy Brown commit to Clemson? Yeah, John, I mean, we'll see. Clemson is certainly in it. You're battling the 2-time national champion, but I think Clemson has as good a shot as anybody.
There you go.
They've done a really good job with him. So I think, obviously getting him on campus again for that official visit weekend is going to be huge. But I think Clemson has put themselves in the best position possible. So we'll see how it goes. See if that relationship wins out. How good is Riley in recruiting? Todd Gwynn asks. The jury's still out on that. We have to. You kind of have to see it. I mean, this is the first time that we've seen Garrett Riley at a big-time Power 5 program. Obviously, he was at TCU before, but there's a different level of recruiting at a school like Clemson than there is at TCU. But he landed some pretty solid quarterback recruits while he was at his 1 year at TCU, and even going back to SMU. But we'll see how much weight it carries on the trail.
Yep.
Go Tiger says Cam Coleman says it's a Clemson LSU battle at the moment. Yeah, those seem to be the two major players in his recruitment. Cam will also be at the official visit weekend on June 2nd. It's good. It's gonna. I think Cam Coleman. He, watching him play, he reminds me a lot. And I don't want to, get too crazy and get people too excited, but he reminds me a lot of, a guy like T. Higgins. Really slender, but super, super long, catches everything. The catch radius is insane. And he's just, the frame is there. If he puts on, I'd really love to see what he looks like, after, 2 or 3 years in a college strength and conditioning program, and to see what kind of prospect he can turn into. Cause I think he's got elite traits.
There you go.
He would be, I think he would be a game changer for sure.
Absolutely.
All the guys that really, I think this is the best as far as the wide receiver targets that Clemson has really keyed in on. I think this is the best group that Clemson has been in it for in a couple of cycles between Cam Coleman, Mike Matthews, Bryant Wesco, the 5-star, Alex Taylor, Braylon Staley. I think this crop of guys, collectively is about as talented as we've seen Clemson be in strong contention for in a while. So I think if you can land at, just a couple, 2 or 3 of those guys, I think that would be huge. That'd be huge. And I think the outlook of the wide receiver room going forward definitely changes a lot, because I think that's a position that a lot of fans have been down on for a while. But that would get some excitement back into that room. And you would have to give props to Tyler Grisham, a guy who's definitely been under a good amount of criticism since he's taken over as the wide receivers coach.
For sure.
Yeah, how could I forget TJ Moore? Yeah, go Tigers. You see, TJ Moore, another elite guy. Love TJ Moore. He's got great speed as well. I think this is a really, really good group that Clemson is after right now.
There's been a lot of talk about this is a prove it year for the Clemson wide receiver coach. What are kind of your thoughts on that? And a lot of Clemson fans have been critical of the wide receiver group. Obviously, there's a lot of validity behind that. And then there's some that say, there will be some coaches dismissed after this season if they do not prove themselves. And he's kind of one of those guys that are being looked at as one of the guys that really have to prove himself this season. So what are your thoughts on a Tyler Grisham? And do you think Dabo Swinney would move on from him if the results are not, what are expected from a Clemson program that was really viewed as wide receiver U widely in the college football sphere for a big part of a decade?
Yeah. It's definitely a prove-it year. I would definitely agree.
Yeah,
and I wouldn't say this if it wasn't for the the dismissal of Braden Streeter this offseason. I definitely think it sent a message to the rest of the coaching staff that hey, it's been reported already. It's common knowledge now that Dabo certainly had that staff meeting after the Orange Bowl and said, hey, I love you guys. I love you guys like family. I want to keep you around. But if you don't do your job, I got to let you go. And so, and definitely the wide receiver room has certainly taken a huge step back over the past couple of seasons. So Tyler Grisham is certainly under the fire. I definitely think he needs to get some big time production out of his group this year. And I definitely think that landing some of these big time wide receiver targets that we just talked about would go a long way as well, because that's something he hasn't necessarily done as of late either. I mean, man, imagine what Clemson's wide receiver room would have looked like if they hadn't landed Antonio Williams last cycle.
Man,
imagine how last season looks from a passing game standpoint. It's hard to imagine.
It would have been non-existent, honestly. It would have been non-existent. L. King says ACC is dead. They sold themselves, and the price was cheap.
Yeah, I mean obviously it wasn't intentional, but it was certainly not with the most foresight, and there's certainly a lot of panic involved, and how the signing of the grant of rights went down and all of that. But hey,
I think it was a hasty deal. They thought that the ACC network would save the conference, and it has not. It has not been what the ACC thought it would be, for sure. But as we talked about earlier, that grant of rights deal runs from now until forever, and there's going to be a lot of looks at it. There's going to be a lot of talk about it. I don't think this is just talk. I mean, honestly, I don't think it's talk just to talk about it. I think there's something brewing in the ACC, and as I previously stated, I don't think the ACC exists past like 3 to 5 years. I really don't. I don't think it exists. So, but Clemson will be okay. Clemson will be okay.
WB2DXS. We looking at any players from Dabo High, aka DW Daniel High School? Not that I know of right now. Not that I know of. There's certainly, if Clemson doesn't hit on some of their bigger targets and they get a little desperate, that could be in play, but not that I know of right now. I think Clemson. I think Clemson has done a really good job at a lot of spots. I don't expect them to miss on all their major targets. I think they're in good shape for a good amount of kids that we've talked about. Go Tiger says Bryant Wesco is probably the best route runner in the country. Yeah, that really would. I mean, it sticks out a lot on tape. On tape, he's comes from a really well coached high school, and I think, and if he and the thing about wide receivers is guys that are just really well coached in high school, and especially when it comes to the technique and route running. I think those are the guys that come in and make really early impacts. I mean, Antonio Williams was the exact same. I mean, he's not blazing fast. He's got good speed, but he's not a burner. No. But he won a lot this past season with his technique, and he came in really, really far ahead when it comes to true freshman wide receivers. And that's why he was able to start even despite not even being an early enrollee. I think a lot of people forget that he didn't enroll until the summer. And so he came in, his first time in a Clemson uniform was in fall camp, and he comes in and is immediately one of the best guys in the room because he came in so refined and well coached. And so a guy like Bryant Wesco, he definitely has that kind of I think he definitely has that kind of cachet for sure. But yeah, Clemson has some Phoenix City juju going lately too. Yeah, I mean, that's never going to be. I mean, that's kind of that's the pipeline, isn't it? Clemson is always going to go into that. They have a lot of connections in that area of Alabama, and they're going to milk it dry, and they're going to take a swing at guys in that area every cycle, and they put out a lot of talented players for sure. So we'll see. Whew. What else are we talking about? You guys thinking about bringing on counterparts from other teams, especially the Noles, either now or during the season before the game? Yes, John. Yes. Actually.
Yes.
We have a lot of things planned for as we get further into the summer. We definitely are going to have some guests from other teams. Well, we're going to have some guests, some other Clemson guys, and we're also going to have guests from other teams. And so we're certainly going to get guys, Florida State guys, South Carolina guys.
Yes.
Hopefully, I'm going to keep the names. I'm going to keep the names a secret for now until we have everything confirmed. But we intend to have.
Yeah, we are working behind the scenes to get some people on for sure. Absolutely. So stay tuned. This show is ever growing. Me and Jordan are constantly bouncing ideas back and forth. Other guys that we can get on, especially in the off season when there's limited things to talk about. So we are forever trying to come up with things to bring to our audience for sure.
See Philly. No, I do not plan on enlisting him. No thanks. No thanks. Go Tiger.
I don't know who that is. So.
You don't. Well, you might, but
I might. Okay.
I don't even want to plug his content on here, so I'm not even going to say the name of his show.
Don't worry about it then. Don't worry about it.
No,
I trust your judgment, Jordan.
Yeah. So, we can certainly get better guys than him.
So that's a no. Go Tigers. That's a no.
Ryan Cantor, who knows?
Maybe. Maybe. We're not going to name names. We're just going to say maybe.
Please say you're going to have Mr. Morgan Thomas on the show. Who
Oh,
knows?
Morgan.
Who knows?
Who knows? Maybe. Maybe we will have Morgan Thomas on the show. I do like Morgan Thomas for sure.
Yeah.
He's a great guy. So
Yeah, great content.
great content. Love his stuff. So yeah, that's definitely a maybe.
See, Clemson signed it along with every other team. The grant of rights. Yep, it was. Yeah, every school signed it. So
Yeah.
for sure, it's easy to blame the ACC leadership, but definitely every school signed. Not only did they sign it, but they celebrated it when it happened. So
Yeah. No. So the big problem with the grant of rights deal is that I think every ACC team thought that it was going to be, kind of the savior of the ACC. They were like, oh, well, the SEC has a network, so the ACC needs a network. And I think ESPN was smart in the fact that they strong armed the ACC and they said, we need this, that, and the other in order to make this network happen. And we signed a bad deal. It was plain and simple. You can look at it from back to front. You can look at it from the day that it was signed. The day that it was signed, it was a bad deal. Especially when you looked at how media and sports media, more specifically sports media, was changing. It was a bad deal. So it is what it is,
Also, score update.
What's
for
it
the
at?
baseball team, Clemson is up 12-3 on North Carolina at the bottom of the seventh of baseball. This team is absolutely this team is absolutely nuts. I'm really excited to see where this team ends up. I mean, obviously, you still got the ACC tournament, but they definitely have a good shot to make some noise there. But they are well on their way to locking up a top 8 national seed, and that's unbelievable to think about. Seeing where this team was a month and a half ago. They were 2-8 in conference. They were I think they were 3 games over 500. And just to they got swept by UCS, swept by Wake Forest. Lost 2 of 3 to South Carolina, lost to USC Upstate. But since then they've been one of the best teams in the country, and it's been pretty incredible to watch what Eric Backage has done in his first year. So really happy for this team right now. They're hitting well. The pitching has improved. Like, the pitching is night and day.
So far from what we started this season as, and it's clear that we made the correct hire at baseball coach for sure. The turnaround from the beginning of this season for Clemson baseball was like, oh God, here we go. It's going to be a rough season. We're just gonna have to suffer through this season and then see what happens next season, right? That was kind of the mood early on for Clemson baseball, and now it's like, hey, we may have something this season. We're gonna host a regional. We're gonna possibly go to, make some noise in the super regionals and even the college World Series. So it's been a complete turnaround for Clemson baseball. The opposite for Clemson softball. Our Clemson softball stumbled into the postseason. We did stumble into a hosting a regional, but we have Auburn, we have UNC, we have.
I don't remember the fourth.
Cal Fullerton is the fourth.
Yeah.
So
tough.
So that starts tomorrow. I mean, I don't really know where our softball team is without getting our hitting back to where it was early on in the season. I don't know where we go, but being a low seed hosting a regional, I think we go. I think we end up in the Oklahoma Super Regional, even if we make it out of our regional. Even if we make it out of our regional, we go to the Oklahoma Super Regional, and that's a team that hasn't lost a game in 40 games. So
They're
uh,
really
it's
good.
it's going to be tough for Clemson softball. It's an uphill battle.
And they won it all last year too.
They won it all last year. They're perennial best team in college softball when it comes to Oklahoma. So it's going to be tough. It's an uphill battle for Clemson softball. Not that we can't do it, but if we don't play, how we played early on in the season, then we have no chance.
Yeah.
So hopefully we can get our bats back. Hopefully we can kind of revitalize that kind of part of our game, and kind of make some noise. I don't know.
For sure. All right. Last couple of questions before we get on out of here.
Yep, let's do it.
John Sirius, how much credit do you give to Leggett being around too? I think a decent amount. Just having Jack Leggett back on, back, and he has the familiarity with Eric Bakich, and he knows what it takes to win here. And he gives valuable advice. I do think it was huge. And they retired his. They just recently retired his jersey. So there's a lot going for this team right now. There's a lot of they're playing with a lot of emotion, a lot of confidence. But I do think Eric Bakich himself brings a different style of ball, and I think he exudes a confidence, a cleanness, a sense of structure to the team that this team has kind of been lacking the past several years. He's been at a lot of different places. He was at ECU. That's where he played at. And he learned a lot of lessons there. He got, he was an assistant at Clemson when Jack Leggett was head coach. He works his way up, gets a head coaching job at Michigan, takes them to the College World Series, and they were like a few innings away from winning it all. And if you guys know anything about college baseball, it's hard to win at a school.
Tough.
Tough. If you're up north and the Big Ten is not.
It's tough, man.
They're a great football conference, but baseball, it is hard to win up there because you're just the recruiting and all of that. It's just different. The resources, all of that. I mean, the college baseball is certainly dominated by the South for sure. For sure.
And
he took that Michigan team to the College World Series and nearly won it all. And so, coming to Clemson, he brings that style of ball. They're playing the right way. They're not relying on hitting the long ball every game. They can manufacture runs. They're aggressive on the base paths. They put the ball in play, but they can also hit it. Hit with power when they need to. And having that kind of balance, that's the kind of baseball that wins in the postseason. Not hoping the bats are hot tonight and hoping we can hit a bunch of homers, because it doesn't always work that way. As the competition steps up, you play better pitchers, more accurate pitchers, and it's tougher to hit on. So you have to be able to just be able to put the ball in play and create and manufacture runs, and that's what this team does really, really well. So I'm really excited to see what this team can do in the postseason for sure.
Yeah, for sure. They're playing super well right now.
Cal Fullerton has a long hit. Yeah, they do. They've won they've won like 5 College World Series. They used to be a blue blood in college baseball. I used to in MVP baseball 07, or it was what year? 07, 06. They were nuts.
Out of this world,
man. Lineup had power. That whole team just raked.
Yeah.
So yeah, no,
Yeah.
Cal State
So
Fullerton. They haven't been
yeah.
great in the last 10 years. They've had some good teams, but they're obviously not as good as they used to be. But they have a long history of being great in
Yeah.
college baseball. So
And it's not an easy path. So
yeah,
this is the postseason, and honestly, this is what Clemson softball has struggled with the most is when they face elite pitching, they can't get the job done on the offensive side of the ball, and that's kind of been the story of Clemson softball season. They ran into Florida State series earlier this year. They ran into elite pitching, and they haven't really recovered since. Hopefully, they can get that dealt out with practicing and batting practice heading into the regional, and then maybe the super regional. But like we say, they're running into Oklahoma, a team that hasn't lost in 40 games. So it's just it's it's going to be a problem for Clemson softball. We're a young team, we're a young program, but you have to have those bats, and if they can't hit against elite pitching, it doesn't matter how elite Clemson pitching is. You're going to lose a game, 1-0, 2-0, 3-0, whatever.
yep,
And that's kind of been the story of Clemson, since since they got swept by the Florida State team that has literally owned the ACC when it comes to softball for the past, how many ever years. They're kind of that team to beat in ACC softball, and Clemson's trying to crack that rotation and become a team that can really challenge them, and they've not been able to do it. They've never beat Florida State.
nope.
So until we can do that, I don't know where we are.
All right. Anything else? Doesn't seem to be. You ready to get out of here?
Yeah, let's get out of here, man. We appreciate you guys getting in here tonight. We got 14 people in here tonight in our live chat. We thank you guys for coming out and showing out in our live chat and communicating with us. We talked a lot about ACC football and conference expansion and all sorts of stuff. We appreciate you guys coming up. And yeah, Jordan, send them off for us, man.
Just to echo what Tiger Paw said, thank you guys for tuning in. Another great show tonight. Make sure you tune in next week, Thursday, 7 p.m. Like we said at the beginning of the show, 7 p.m. is the default start time. Unless we put anything out on the community tab, it's going to be 7 o'clock on Thursdays from now on. So don't worry about us flip-flopping with the time. And we'll definitely give you guys some advance for sure if we have to, move the show. But once again, thank you guys for tuning in, and we will see you guys next week.
Yep. Until next time, I'm Tiger Paul Craven. He's Jordan Bowman. We'll see you next week.
Later, y'all.
Later.